Northern Michigan, please help me welcome a solid conservative, the next candidate for the Republican Party for president and the next president of the United States, Rick Santorum. Thank you very much. Wow. It's great to be here in Traverse City. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ray. I appreciate that. A solid conservative, and I appreciate the great work that you're doing in Lansing and turning this state around after the misery of a Democratic governor and Democratic legislature for so many years, getting Michigan back on track. I want to start by introducing the member of a family who's with me here today. We, as many of you know, Karen and I have been married for 21 years. We have 7 children we're raising, and thank you. It's a great blessing, but I always say that if we didn't have such a great first child, we probably wouldn't have had 6 more. So, and this is our first child, Elizabeth, who's here with me today. She's my 20-year-old. She has taken time off of school. She and her brother are both college age, both taking time off of school, take the whole year off to come and campaign. Elizabeth's been traveling around the country doing events on her own, but she also keeps an eye on me and counsels me when I don't do well. I did 2 Sunday shows this morning, and she was like, that answer was okay, but you need to work on that, in between them. So you know what it likes, dads and moms, right, when your kids get to be this age. So, but Elizabeth is a twofer for me because she's working on the campaign full-time, as is my son, John, and I don't have to pay their college tuition. It's working out well for us. So thank you very much, Elizabeth. I'll let you go down and say hi to other folks so you don't have to stand up here. But we also have, as I mentioned, we have 6 other children. And my wife, Karen, we've been traveling around the country quite a bit. Karen just came off a road trip we were on out there for 5 days out in Arizona. We were here in Michigan earlier, and the family is very, very much a part of this. I know that many of you have asked about and prayed for our little girl Bella, and I just want you to know that she's hanging in there. She's doing great. We've been very, very blessed with your prayers. She's one of my great inspirations, and I'm excited to be out here on the campaign trail. And as Ray said, there are a lot of big issues, a lot of things that have to be done in Washington, D.C., a lot of work to be done because there's a lot of damage being done. A lot of damage being done to our country right now by a president who doesn't understand what America is about, what makes America successful. See, this president thinks government makes America successful. He thinks that's right, he thinks the more the government does, the better off America's going to be. I will share with you something. He said a couple of quotes I think is really important for you to understand just how this president sees America. He said about early in his presidency, he was asked whether he believes in American exceptionalism. And his answer was, I believe in American exceptionalism like the British believe in British exceptionalism and the Greeks believe in Greek exceptionalism. In other words, we're all homers. None of us really have anything to crow about that's any different than anybody else. We just all think we're great because that's who we are. Well, Mr. President, you're wrong. We're great because this country was founded great and is the greatest country in the history of the world. This country was founded great. This country was founded with its original documents as the greatest country because we did something unique in human history that made us different, that's attracted all of you. All of you came to this country, either you or your ancestors, because they wanted to be free. They wanted the opportunity. They wanted the opportunity to do something that they couldn't do in the countries they lived in. Why? Well, because They had people who were kings or emperors or dictators who were, or bureaucrats telling them how to live their lives, what to do and how to do it. They wanted to be in a country that was different. And America was different. America is that beacon of hope to the rest of the world. Not just because people want to come here and participate with what America is, but that our values are values that they can aspire to in their own country, to try to transform their own countries into something more like America. And we've done that. Our values have spread throughout the world, and the quality of life and the amount of political and economic freedom that people have now are legion more than they were before America was around. We have to be proud of that. We shouldn't be apologizing that for. You should be proud of what America does. Our country was founded great on documents that, well, it's almost incredible to think about. But the founding documents of our country, the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, those two documents come together. If you have a pocket constitution, almost every pocket constitution has not just the Constitution, but the Declaration. Because one without the other simply doesn't work. The Constitution without the Declaration can be a very dangerous document, and I'll explain why. And the Declaration without the Constitution, well, Constitution is the why of America, but the Constitution is how you put that why into practice. It's the operator's manual. And really, if you think about it, up until the last couple of years, this document was not one that politicians, or frankly, very many people in this country would talk about. I served in Washington in Congress for a couple of terms in the House and a couple of terms in the Senate. And I could probably count on one hand the number of times at a town hall meeting someone would mention the Constitution to me. Until the Tea Party came around. And the Tea Party came around and revitalized the idea that government was limited. There were certain things government should do at the federal level and a lot of things they shouldn't do at the federal level, right? Well, it's incredible to think that a Supreme Court justice just the other day was asked the question, would you recommend the United States Constitution if you were recommending to another country what document by which to found their country? And Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, one of Barack Obama's favorites on the court, said no, she would not. A Supreme Court justice asked in a foreign country whether she would recommend this document, and she said no. Why? Because it's outdated. It's an old document that doesn't grasp the progress that we've made in analyzing how the world really works. The new truths that we've come up with in our modern culture. And she recommended actually the South African Constitution as the better constitution. I've heard a couple of good suggestions about what to do to Justice Ginsburg with respect to her travel plans, but maybe retirement plans would be better. But hold on, let's not encourage her too much. Let her wait a year or so before she does that. So here we have these two documents that created this great country. Why? Because this is the operator's manual. The Declaration was key because the Declaration was the anchor upon which the Constitution was tethered to. The Declaration was vital for everyone in America to understand why America is different than any other country and still is different than every other country. As much as other countries try to replicate, some do. They can't quite do what we do here because of, who we are. And the Declaration of Independence said these very important words, which you all know. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created and endowed by their with certain inalienable rights. Among them, there you go. Now, that's great. Congratulate yourself. That's great. You have to understand, that was revolutionary. At the time that was written, there wasn't a country in the world that had ever been founded on that principle. That was something that, was written about in philosophy, political theory maybe, but never instituted. Why? Because there were just emperors and kings who believed in the divine right of kings. Rights came to the sovereign, not to the subjects. People subjected to the will of the sovereign. That's how the world worked. People back then who were born into leadership or conquered into leadership believed that they had the rights and that you were incapable as average people. You were incapable of managing your lives and being free, and that you needed those who were smarter, went to the better institutions of higher learning, better bred. They were the ones who should, rule you for your benefit, of course. And how did that work out for humankind? At the time of Jesus Christ, life expectancy was 35 to 40 years of age. After 1,800 years of the rule of those benevolent rulers who were there for your benefit, to help you, life expectancy didn't change in 1,800 years. Didn't change. You look at, we were an agrarian society in 1800 just like they were in the time of Jesus Christ. And then America happened. America said, nope, we're not going to have rights relegated to a few. We're going to do something revolutionary. We're going to write a document that says that everybody, rich, poor, no matter who, everybody, all are created equal, is what they said. All. And our founders believed that you would go out and subsequently when they passed this Constitution to protect those rights. That's what this Constitution does. The Constitution provides for limited government, a very small federal government, more powerful states and local communities of which you would have much more control over, so you could limit their abilities to limit your rights. So you could go out and build a society. One family, one church, one school, one business, one charitable organization at a time. And in fact, that's what Alexis de Tocqueville wrote about in the 1830s when he wrote Democracy in America. And he talked about how wonderful democracy was flourishing in America. Why? Limited government. Right? Limited government. Remember, de Tocqueville came from France. And what was happening during the years that he was growing up? The French Revolution. Tyranny. Why? They had a constitution. They weren't being ruled by monarchs anymore. They had a republic, just like we did. Only it wasn't like ours. Their constitution was similar to ours, but there was something different. They didn't have a Declaration of Independence. They had 3 words that comprised their anchor upon which their constitution was tethered. Equality, good. Liberty, good. Fraternity, problematic. Why? Fraternity means that you get your rights from each other. as opposed to America, which didn't believe in fraternal rights, but paternal rights, rights coming from God. Like many in America today, they would like to see those paternal rights eliminated and be fraternal rights, rights coming to you from the government, not rights that you have because of the dignity of every human person. But we will ignore the dignity and God-given rights and say that, no, the government is the one that will give you those rights. Force God out of the public square. He has no role there. I don't know if you saw my interview this morning on some of the Sunday morning shows, but that was the question. How dare you say that John F. Kennedy's speech in Houston was something that made you sick 50 years ago? 51 to be, 52 now to be exact. Why? Because he said this: I believe in a America that where the separation of church and state is absolute. That is France, not America. And look what happens in France. A group of people who now no longer have to respect anybody's rights. It's whatever the government says you have the right to is what you have the right to. Results in tyranny, the mob rule of the majority, instead of respect for the minority and the rights, because everybody has rights, not just those in power. That's the difference. I say all of this because that is what's at stake in America today. We have a group of people who believe, like the kings of old, that they are the ones who should allocate the resources. They are the ones who know best how to organize the economy, organize the community, organize and support the family, whatever that definition may mean. And it doesn't really matter because everything's okay. In fact, the more direct relationship they have with you, the individual, and more all of these other institutions that instill values that the state doesn't necessarily like, we want them sort of marginalized. We want people of faith, fine, if you want to believe whatever you want to believe in your church, go ahead. But don't you dare come out here and tell us, don't you dare come out here and tell us what you think is right for the country. You're not allowed to do that anymore. You ever hear the president and the Secretary of State, when they talk about freedom of religion, they don't say that anymore. You know what they say? Freedom of worship. Go and Google it and find. He'll say freedom of worship. Worship goes. That's great. It's a very important part of your faith is worship. But you know, your faith is also what goes on outside of the church, not just what's inside of the church. You see, that's why these HHS regs make perfectly good sense to the president. Wow, I'm not imposing anything on the church. I wouldn't impose that on the church. I'm just going to impose it on everybody outside the church who's with the church, because that's not really religion. Religion's only what you do inside the church, and you just keep it there. And we're going to tell you how to run your faith and practice it outside of the church. Now, that would be bad enough, but you need to understand there was a case just a few months ago called Hosanna Tabor. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Obama administration argued that employment discrimination laws should apply with respect to the hiring of ministers for the church. And that the Obama administration made the argument that they could force a church to hire a minister who did not agree with the faith of that church. I kid you not. I kid you not. They took that case all the way to the Supreme Court to argue they could enforce government laws to make churches, synagogues, mosques hire people who didn't agree with their faith to teach the faith and preach the gospel. Here's a shocker. They lost 9-0. Even Justice Kagan was saying, what are you folks thinking? But the point here is important. They tried to do it. So this idea, oh, well, you know, we're imposing on the religious liberties of the Catholic Church. Oh, come on. You know, if you want to practice this stuff in your church, go ahead. But don't tell me you really want to live it out. We don't believe that. We'll tell you how to live your faith out. This is a fundamental issue of rights. Who has rights in America? How do you get them? And who exercises them? Whether you do or the government does. Right now, the biggest infringer upon rights, the most obvious to every American, the one that is front and center, is Obamacare. It's not just religious liberty. It's not just freedom of speech. I'm sure you saw that one of the archbishops of the military tried to communicate with his flock in the army, and the army told him that he couldn't read the letter at church services on Sunday. And they forced him to change the language of the letter in order to read it to Catholics in the army. Because they said the language was seditious, because they said they would not comply with the government's edict. And they made them change the language in order for it to be read. So it's not just freedom of religion, it's freedom of speech. But of course, the whole essence of Obamacare is freedom for you to be able to choose what health plan, what doctor, what hospital, whether to engage in insurance at all. That's your choice. It's not the government's choice to force you to do that. The government is going to tell you they force you to buy insurance. The next thing they're going to do is going to force you to buy, light bulbs. Oh, well, they're already doing that. No, they're doing that. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. They're going to force you to buy diet sodas at school. Oh, no, they're doing that too. Guess what? This is an issue. It is the heart. One of the reasons America is struggling economically, because we have this huge yoke of government now coming down upon us. We don't like that in America. We don't soar in America when government is micromanaging everything we're doing. We hold back. We don't invest. We don't take risk. We don't grow because we're uncertain about what government is about to do to us next or how they're going to reinterpret some law that's already in place. Obamacare is the worst example of that. It's the worst example of robbing us of our liberty, crushing our economy, and driving up the huge power of government and the huge cost of government. $2 trillion in new spending. And according to the press, that'll lower health care costs. Yeah. I mean, you're almost speechless when you hear stuff like that. I mean, how stupid does he think we are? And yet, that is the number one issue in this campaign. Freedom, economic liberties, liberty generally, and what government is doing to crush and hurt our economy. And the number one example is health care. Anybody ever hear of health savings accounts? You know who the author of health savings accounts was 20 years ago? Well, how did you know that? That's very good. All right. My guess is you were guessing, but that's good. Yeah. See, I've been for private sector health care from the first year I was in the House of Representatives. As a freshman congressman, I wrote a bill with a guy named John Kasich. You might know him. He's a governor of a state just to the south of here. Well, we wrote that bill together. And I was an advocate for that throughout the course of my political career. I ran my 1994 race on government versus Hillary care, government health care versus private sector, consumer-driven health care, bottom up, like America was built. The reason I talk about that story of describing who we are as a society, what the Declaration means, what America was from the foundation, because what a conservative is someone that looks at what is true and right and has worked in the past. And you apply those principles to today. Why? Because the truth doesn't change. We know what works in America, bottom up. Bottom up has built a great country. And we need to have someone who is unapologetically, uncompromisingly for bottom-up solutions to the problems that confront this country. The problem is that this race seems to be boiling down, certainly in Michigan, to two candidates. One who doesn't particularly have a good track record on these very important issues of the day. On the issue of Obamacare and government-run health care. Unfortunately, and I say that truly, unfortunately, Governor Romney not only instituted government-run health care, the first comprehensive government program running health care from the top down in the state of Massachusetts, which was indeed the model for Obamacare. I've read the bills. I've looked at them both. On their very foundation, they are the same. In some respects, Governor Romney's plan is worse because it includes, for small business, for example, Obama sets a threshold of being in the bill at 50. Romney's at 10 employees or more. The mandates are the same. You have to buy insurance. You get fined if you don't. You get penalized as a business. You have not 5 plans under Obama you can choose from, 4 under Romney. It's the same. And he stands by it. He advocates for it. And then he says, oh, but I don't want it at the federal level, therefore I'll repeal it. Wow, that's a big difference. I'm for government running your life only out of the state capital, not the nation's capital. That'll make everybody, people feel better about it now. All right? It's a losing argument. Why? In the most important election of our lifetime, when our freedoms are at stake, why would the people of Michigan put up someone who can't make the fundamental argument at the core of this election and give that issue away to Barack Obama? The Tea Party movement got energized, yes, because of Obamacare, but also about the Wall Street bailouts, right? Also about the big government spending of the Wall Street bailouts. Well, I wasn't for the Wall Street bailouts. I came from Pittsburgh. We had an industry just like in Michigan had a huge industry. That was a huge part of our state. Western Pennsylvania, southeastern Michigan, 2 big industries. The steel industry, the giants of the steel industry resided in Pittsburgh. All but one is gone. They're all gone. Most of them out of business. Did the government come in and bail them out? No, they did not. They went out of business. The mills closed. And it was tough. It was tough for a long time in Pittsburgh. But now, in place of the steel mills along the Monongahela River, are high technology buildings, high technology manufacturing, medical devices, and steel mills. Both are still there. Not as big as they once were. But now we have a diversified economy. It's taken a while. But Pittsburgh and southwestern Pennsylvania are coming back. Why? Because markets work. And we got to believe in that. We've always believed in that. That's why I oppose the Wall Street bailouts. That's why I oppose the bailout in Detroit. I oppose all the bailouts. The difference is I stood on the principle of believing in the free market. Governor Romney did not. He makes the argument, well, I was against the bailout in Detroit because the market should work. Well, then why were you not for letting the market work in Wall Street? Why is Wall Street different? Either you believe in markets or you don't. Well, I do. That doesn't mean we don't have to have programs that help people. But bailouts aren't the answer, particularly now we're running against Barack Obama's for all those bailouts, authored one of those bailouts. Where's the contrast? Where's the principled vision as to where you're going to take America? One of the reasons our campaign is doing well is that we have a vision. We have a principled vision and a track record to back it up about where America wants to go. It's not just, I'm a better manager, elect me. We don't need someone to better manage Washington. We need a fundamental change in Washington that gets power back to the people in this country. And one area that we can do that, if you're looking at plans and how we're going to make that change, so we can make sure that those industries that I was just talking about can survive. One of the first areas we have to go is energy. That's what Ray was talking about earlier. It is so important. You look at what's going on in America today with rising gas prices. $4, maybe even up to $5. They're saying maybe we'll see the first time $5 a gallon or more. Why? Again, look at the policies. Look at the energy policies of this administration. They bought into this idea of man-made global warming. Well, Barack Obama was not alone in buying into man-made global warming. Two of the other people on the stage with me the other night also bought into man-made global warming and still talk about it. One of them still talks about it today. Happens to be former governor of Massachusetts, who crowed as a governor that he was the first governor in the nation to impose a cap on CO2 emissions to make sure that they were doing their part in Massachusetts to reduce global warming. I like this term resolute that he used the other night. Maybe he doesn't understand what the term resolute means. But it means that you're supposed to have sort of a resolve of a consistent pattern of beliefs, not be for private sector when you're out there working on your own and then government bailouts when you're in public policy. Not saying that you believe in conservative economics and then support a government takeover of the healthcare system. And not say that you believe in caps and trade to be able to control people's lives and their allocation of energy resources and manufacturers or individuals. You see, we've stood by those principles. I didn't buy the game that the left was playing to try to get more money from people so they could take more power away from you. See, I did my homework. I'm the grandson of a coal miner, and so when I see people going out and say that coal's a bad thing and gas and oil and all this is bad, that all this stuff in the ground is a liability, not an asset. I understand what makes America successful and the quality of life strong in America, and it's energy. The lower the price of energy, the more available the energy, the higher quality of life there is in any country in the world. So when people come out and say, oh, no, 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 we need higher energy, and I know they aren't for you. They're not for you. They have some other agenda. And I understood that this global warming was not climate science. It was political science is what it was. And so we're going to put forth an energy plan that I can stand on and say, you know what, this is where I've been. We're going to contrast it with Barack Obama, who shut down oil drilling offshore and in the Gulf, won't open up Alaska, won't open up federal lands. It was just up in the UP, and they were talking about timbering up there. I know it. We have a big national forest in Pennsylvania. We're fighting right now with the government to be able to cut our timber. We're talking about thousands of jobs and, of course, rural areas. You know, there aren't that many folk up there, not many votes. We don't have to worry about them up there. What's a few hundred jobs in rural areas? Well, that's basically the survival of a school district, probably. But to the bureaucrats in Washington, it's just a few folks that don't matter. What matters is doing the right thing for the environment, the right thing for the people in those communities. Who do you think cares more about those forests? The bureaucrats in Washington or the people who live in that community and whose children are going to live in that community? We need to have a president who has a policy of using the resources, of being good stewards of the environment, but understanding the earth is there to serve man, not the other way around. That's that phony ideology I was talking about the other day. It is a phony, it's a false choice. Man, you know, the one who's intelligent can actually manage and husband resources and care for the earth. That's what we're here to do. We are good stewards. We are responsible for being good conservationists and good stewards of the environment. It's important for us to be that way. But I trust you, not the ravages and uncertainty of what earth is going to do as we leave it alone, right? So this is something we have to understand, that we're going to have an energy policy that's going to take advantage of the great opportunities we have in this country. In this country, we have the ability to be able to produce gas and oil and coal to make us energy self-sufficient. It's possible. Now, some of it is going to require us converting to different energy sources for different things. Like natural gas, for example. Natural gas is $2.50 right now. 7 years ago in America, it was $13. It's 15 in Europe, 17 in the Middle East, 18 in China. We have the cheapest natural gas by far in the world. What are we doing? Not much. Not much. We're producing a lot. Well, except the Obama administration is now threatening to shut down drilling because of hydraulic fracking being a very dangerous thing. Except we've already drilled a few 100,000 wells using this technology. And all of a sudden, now that we've driven down gas prices, we're going to look at it. Well, we can't have this. Oh, no, we can't have cheap energy. What we need to do is look at how we can take that cheap energy produced here in America and start converting some of our transportation vehicles to that natural gas. It's cleaner burning. Engines last longer. And it's produced here in America. That's called, now I know you're going to be shocked, that's called an energy plan. Okay? We need to develop oil and gas. We need to develop coal. All the resources. Get rid of all the subsidies. Let the marketplace work and go out and produce. We'll open up Alaska. We'll build the Keystone Pipeline. We'll open up offshore. And the second thing we need to get this economy growing. The plan, I mean, people need to see a vision as to where we're going. Well, yes, cheaper energy is a big part of it. But we also need to make sure that we have the opportunity for this economy to reignite. See, I believe that America has been listing in part because we aren't making as much as we used to make in America. We aren't manufacturing. That's real wealth creation when you make something, right? Well, we used to have a lot more people employed in manufacturing in America. About 21% of the workforce used to be. Now it's 9%. We could be the exporter of choice for the world. We have the best workers. We have the best schools and technology. We have the natural resources aplenty. We have great transportation systems compared to the rest of the world. We're access to markets in the East and in the West. We are perfectly situated. And yet we've done nothing, either party. We've said, well, we'll just treat manufacturing like everything else has to compete like every other business. Problem is, it's not competing like every other business. It has to compete against foreign competition who wants our jobs and wants to eat our lunch. And unless we do something to recognize that our government tax and regulatory policy is causing American businesses who manufacture to be at a competitive disadvantage because of those two things with the rest of the world, that unless we change that, no matter how much we cut our wages, we're not going to compete. And so I've put forward a plan that cuts taxes for all businesses in half, from a 35% tax, which is the corporate tax today, to a flat 17%, simple net profits tax, no deductions, no exclusion, just a very simple tax that every small business and large business will pay. But we want to go out and get manufacturing jobs back to this country, and we do two things to do that in the tax bill that I put forward. Number one, we cut the corporate tax to 0 for manufacturers. If you make things here in America, you'll pay no taxes. Guess what's going to happen? A whole lot of people are going to come back and make things in America. And if you did make things overseas, all will be forgiven. All will be forgiven. If you take that money you made overseas, it's estimated about $1.7 trillion in overseas profits are sitting in banks around the world by manufacturers because they don't want to bring it back because it's subject up to a 35% tax. So they don't bring it back, and they just reinvest it in those countries to the extent they need to. Well, here's what I've said to all those manufacturers. Come home. And if you come home and you bring that money back and you invest it in plant and equipment to build or expand your capacity here, you will pay no tax on that money. The biggest problem we are going to have, I predict, in the next few years after this bill passes is finding enough trained workers to do the jobs that are going to be out there and available. And some of those people are going to have to go to college, but a lot of them won't have to go to college. They have to go to technical school and trade schools, community colleges, places where they can get skills and get to work, sometimes in an entry-level job. But as I know, growing up in a steel town, in a manufacturing town, you get that entry-level job, and year after year, you pick up skills, you cross-train, and you can able to rise in there. You get the foreman job and a management job. That's the ladder of success in America. That's a vision. Thank you. Out of the mouths of babes. That's a vision for America. It's a vision for growth and opportunity for everyone. Not the 1% versus the 99%. I care about the very rich, and by the way, I care about the very poor too. And I want them to have an opportunity to rise in society, not be dependent upon government programs. Safety nets are no answer to those who are suffering in our society. And with that growth and dynamism, we can grow the economy, grow tax revenues, but that isn't going to be enough to handle the problems that this country has. We need to reduce the size and scale of government for two reasons. Number one, we need to reduce the size and scale of government to get government spending down and get our deficits down and balance the budget. But second, we need to get the size and scale of government down so that it gets off your back and running your lives. So we have a dynamic plan that takes on every sacred cow there is, every single entitlement program. I'm not going to wait for 10 years to deal with these programs. I support Paul Ryan's budget, but it's frankly too timid. It doesn't start soon enough. It doesn't do big enough. We need to take on all of the entitlement programs. Why? When I was born, entitlement programs comprised less than 10% of the budget. It's now not 10% or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50, 60% of the budget. When I was born, defense comprised 60% of the budget. Now it's not 50 or 40 or 30 or even 20. It's 17% of the budget. Now we have some people who say defense is the problem. We need to pull our troops home and slash the defense budget. I say defense is not our problem. It is what keeps our country free and our economy sound. We will efficiently manage the Defense Department. I served 8 years on the Armed Services Committee. I was a subcommittee chairman for all of those 8 years, except when Jim Jeffords switched parties and we lost the chairmanship for a little bit. But I was subcommittee chairman, and I understand how the Pentagon works. Or should I step back? I understand how the Pentagon doesn't work in many cases when it comes to buying things and the procurement programs. There's a lot of money we can save in that area. There's a lot of money we can save in the Defense Department, but we need to plow that back in to making sure that our troops, there's enough troops, they're trained as the best military in the world, and that they have the best equipment to do the job that we're asking them to do, which is not an easy one. So any savings in the Defense Department go back into the Defense Department. Number one. The rest of the government, we've got to do something. All right? And that's two things. Number one, we have to cut the federal workforce. 10%, freeze pay. And that's just a start. We need to take a good hard look at all of these departments, agencies, and understand, and explain why they're there, other than to process paper and do reports. We're going to put together sound business practices to go in there agency by agency, shrink those agencies, turn them into not process factory, but product factories. In other words, we're going to see what the goal is of these organizations as opposed to following the regulations. We need to be productive in government, or we need to get rid of the agencies completely if they can't be productive. And then the big one, entitlement programs. 72 means-tested entitlement programs in America today. 72. We need to take 70 of them. We need to take, I think, actually all 72, I guess there's 72 means tests, all 72. We need to do what we did with welfare reform. I was the author of welfare reform. When I was in the House of Representatives, it was part of the contract with America. When I went to the Senate, I managed the bill on the floor of the House, floor of the Senate, and got 70 votes ultimately and got Bill Clinton's signature on a bill that ended a federal entitlement to income support, aid to families with dependent children, AFDC. It's gone. And we replaced it with a temporary program, a program that said we will take the money the federal government spends, which at the time was at an all-time high on welfare. The caseload was the highest it had ever been, and this was 4 years into a recovery. It was the highest it had ever been. We said we're going to take that money, We're going to cut it, cap it. We're going to send it back to the states with two major provisos. One, there will be a time limit on welfare, and number two, there will be a work requirement if you are on welfare. We need to do the very same thing for Medicaid, food stamps. Food stamps at an all-time high right now. All-time high. Now, President Obama thinks that's a good thing. I don't. I want all these programs to go just like welfare. Give it to the states, cut it by 10%, cap it, freeze it for 5 years, give it to the states, work requirement, time limit. Let's take welfare, all welfare programs, and turn them into a helping hand up, not a permanent handout. We can save an enormous amount of money. And then we have Medicare and Social Security. Two big ones, but two things that must be addressed. Those two programs combined, it's about a third of the budget. And under Paul Ryan's budget, he doesn't deal with Medicare for 10 years, and he doesn't even touch Social Security. Ladies and gentlemen, I didn't run for president at the most critical time in American history to come out here and tell Americans a bunch of happy talk that doesn't tell you the truth about the fiscal situation we're in right now. We are at the we're bordering on bankruptcy. Our credit rating has been downgraded. We are now 105% of our debt versus GDP. You understand what that means? We have more debt than we do the overall economy in this country. Now, we are reaching a point, and some have suggested we've reached it, where unless we do something, lots of bad things like what's going on in Europe is going to start happening here in America. That's why our credit was downgraded. We need to do something now. And when we say, well, we're going to do everything, but we're going to have some sacred cows that we can't touch. Unfortunately, these two programs are huge, and we have to deal with them. And I'm not going to go out and tell you a lie. Oh, I won't touch those programs. I can't say that because it's not true and it's not fair. Let me give you an example. And plus, one of these programs is one of the most wasteful programs in Washington, Medicare. How many Medicare recipients have ever gotten a bill that says this is not a bill? How many of you as people in the healthcare system have gotten a bill that says this is not a bill? Why? Because there's no economy in healthcare. If you got a bill from your grocery store that said this is not a bill, if you got a from your plumber, this is not a bill. And by the way, we just came in and fixed your faucet, $2,000 for the bill. But we've negotiated with your insurance company and we'll write off $1,800 of that. And they'll pay $150 and you pay $50. Now, how many think that plumber is honest about what they're charging for their product? No. How many think the hospitals and doctors actually bill you for what they charge you for what it really should be priced at? None of them do. It's all a game. There's no economy. Medicare is the worst. The bills that are paid, the fraud that is done. Why? Because it's not their money at the government, and the doctors are being squeezed every which way. They're just trying to take whatever they can get, and the hospitals are the same way. It's a mess. Why? Because there's no market. Because you aren't involved as consumers of health care. And unless we change that, unless you start to get involved, then we're going to have this false economy, this game between providers and insurers and the government as to really what the price is and how much you should use. Every time we've gone to a government program, guess what happens? Oh, we were going to save money. That's what Massachusetts said. No, care went up. Price went up. Why? You give something for free, guess what? They use more of it. You've got to have some element of cost. The consumer has to be involved. I know people in America are conditioned to think, well, we shouldn't have to decide between going to see the doctor and putting gas in my car. Well, you have to decide between putting gas in your car and buying food. You don't want the government to come in and say, oh, well, you shouldn't have, we should take care of everything for you. You should have insurance for everything. That's crazy. Imagine if we had an insurance that covered food. And you played, instead of Blue Cross and Blue Shield, Blue Cow and Blue Pig. And you pay them $500 a month, and then you can go to the grocery store and shop for nothing. Or pay a co-payment at the register. How many people would overconsume at the grocery store? Right? Well, you're not paying for it. You pay a fraction of it. And guess what happened to food prices and the amount of food that we would consume? You think we have an obesity problem now? We have a health care problem now. We are over-consuming, right? It's not healthy. Those are the kinds of changes I'm going to go out and talk to the American public about. In health care and Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you the truth. And I believe that if you tell the American public the truth, that actually, and you stand up to all of the media and all of the folks on the left who are going to go out and try to scare you all. We're going to scare you all because you guys can't handle freedom. You need to let government do things. NDAA. NDAA is a bill that was a stupid bill that they passed that they should fix and make sure that every American citizen who's detained should have a right to a lawyer and counsel before a federal judge. It's as simple as that. That was the law before NDAA. It should be the law. It will be the law if I'm President of the United States. Every American. Oh, you don't want to have counsel?
No, I don't want our military to arrest innocent.
I don't want them to arrest innocent people too, but I do want them to arrest terrorists if they're in this country. Okay? You're dangerous. No. What we need to do is that everybody in America has rights. If you're an American citizen, to go to a court and have the government, if they have arrested you and detained you, to have a right to a federal judge and to have a right to counsel and have a federal judge, like they would in any other case, make a determination as to whether you should be properly held. Once that's and that was the law, and it should maintain the law. That's the balance between individual liberty and security in our country. Now, back to the point I was making, final, and then I'll open up for a few more questions like this. And that is, we need to trust the American people. If we trust the American people, I will tell you, as you saw, I'm going to get beat up because I'm out there telling, I never have to worry about what I say. Because I always say what's on my heart. And I may not say it the most articulately sometimes. And I understand that. But I have no teleprompters. I answer questions. I answer questions from the public in front of cameras. I answer questions from the press every day. I don't hide. I don't hide from the public. I don't have structured events where only my friends are in front of me to take questions. When someone doesn't agree with me, I tell them the answer, even if they don't want to hear that answer. But you know what? Because you're entitled to hear what the truth is and make the decision as to whether you want to support me or not. That's the way America works. Okay? All right, so let's get to it. You got some questions. Yes, sir.
If you were president at the time.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
If you were president at the time, what would you have done to save the life of Terry Scheidel?
Well, I did what I thought was the right thing to do. And by the way, every member of Congress, both Republican and Democrat, House and Senate, agreed that there should have been a federal hearing to determine whether the state protected her rights and have an appeal process through the federal court. There was a division between the families, and the Congress unanimously felt that we can execute somebody. To execute somebody, you have to go through an entire appeals process, not just state, but federal, in order to take that person's life. And in this case, the state had only looked at this case, not the federal government. And we were taking a life where there was a dispute as to whether that life should be taken. And that's why the Congress, all of us, agreed that there should be a federal review. I think that was sufficient. Yes.
Because of the limited access that we get to you because of the media, I'm here today to see who Rick is. And once you're in office...
How's it looking so far? Okay.
Once you're in office, that you're going to be at the helm, you know, and not say that once you're, well, I didn't realize I can't do all these things. And
Well,
the ship rather than just going and play golf or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I love to play golf, by the way. Can I tell you a golf story? I got to brag on this because I haven't done this yet. But I was in. I love to play golf, but I haven't picked up a golf club in 9 months. I actually work for a living, and so. But look, I mean, it's wonderful that the president takes vacations, you know, every other day, maybe a bit much, but nevertheless. But I got to tell you, I was in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Coeur d'Alene is up in the pipe stem, the northern part of Idaho, right near Spokane, Washington. And there is at the place I went to, we had a rally there in Coeur d'Alene. It was it's a resort town, so it was at the resort. And they have a floating green. It's a green that actually floats out on the lake there, and it can move around and things like that. And so I just happened to pull in there, and I'd heard about this floating green, and I saw the green, and it looked like it was pretty far offshore. And I said, boy, that's quite a shot. He said, well, the lake is down this time of year, so we move it out so it doesn't get stuck on the rocks. And I said, well, how far out is it? He said, 270 yards. I said, okay, buddy. I said, give me a golf club. We're going to go out there. They gave me a pair of shoes. First shot, low and left in front. Second shot, on the green, on the right side. Third shot, dead center of the green, rolled off the back edge. I just want to let you know that you don't, that I do have skills beyond what you're seeing here. Just want to let you know. So go ahead. Did you finish your question? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Yeah, that's, you know, the question there is, you tell me if you're going to replace Debbie Stabenow, and I'll give you a good idea as to whether we're going to have permanent tax job changes or not. Okay? The reason tax laws are not made permanent is because of the United States Senate. The United States Senate, in order to pass a bill, you need 60 votes. Right now, the Republicans have 47 senators. If we have an election this year like the Democrats did 6 years ago, when they won 23 of 33 Senate races, just everybody got wiped out who was in any kind of competitive race. If we have an election where we win 23 out of 33, then we will have 60 votes. And if we have 60 votes, we can pass permanent tax law changes. If we don't, then we have to do tax laws through reconciliation, which means a 5-year budget window. So it's a 5-year, and most a 10-year, we can do 10 years, 10-year budgets. So I would like to be able to do a permanent one. I would like to have a big enough number and support enough bipartisan support, and I think our plan that I laid out to you is going to have a lot of bipartisan support. I think people are going to like the fact that we've focused in on making sure that the economy is going to be available for everybody. So I'm not going in there saying, oh, I'm only going to appeal to Republicans. We're going to try to appeal to folks who want to see this economy growing again, and I think the tax plan that we put forward will do it. If we can do that, if we can put together a tax plan that cuts taxes and gets this economy growing and gets the 60 votes necessary, that will be my objective, to work together in a bipartisan way to get the conservative principles that I've talked about here today passed and into action with 60 votes and making permanent changes. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, you've been waving your hand a lot, so. How am I fixing your VA? Well, let me just say that I have a little experience in this area in the sense that I grew up on a VA grounds. lived the first 18 years of my life on a VA grounds, and my parents worked there for 40 years each. And so I understand the importance of the Veterans Administration to our veterans and to our veterans organizations. And I believe that we have to spend the resources that are necessary to give the quality care that our veterans deserve. And we have to do so and run these organizations as efficiently and effectively as possible. And so we will make sure that as someone who is committed to our veterans, who grew up around veterans, we will make sure that, number one, we aren't going to change veterans' benefits after the fact. If we're going to change any benefits going forward for our military personnel, we're going to do so when they sign up, not after they've signed up and done their service. So this will be a as I said before, we're not going to cut the defense budget or the veterans budget. We're going to make sure that we're keeping our commitments, particularly now when the VA is going to be continually strained because of the tremendous operational tempo that we put our military through. I'll take two more, and then I'll take, because I haven't taken one from this side. Yes, ma'am. Well, yeah, as I said before, you know, I will get rid of Obamacare one of two ways. Well, actually, one of three ways. You know, again, if you give it, this is important to me. If you replace Debbie Stabenow, I know I mentioned that before, but I served with her, so please replace Debbie Stabenow. And so if you can do that, then we can repeal Obamacare outright if we get somewhere in around 60 votes. Or close to it, because I think there's enough Democrats, when Barack Obama loses and they lose control of the Senate, they might get the idea. And you have a presidential candidate that makes Obamacare issue number one in the campaign. Then you'll have folks who get reelected or are there as Democrats who are up for election in 2 years who are not going to be wanting to vote to keep Obamacare in place. So even if we don't get 60 votes, I think there's a great chance for us to be able to repeal that law. Short of that, we'll have to go through something called a reconciliation process, which means that we will just gut all the money out of it. And I'll need 50 votes to be able to do that. I have no concern that we'll have those votes. The third way is through a executive order that is actually necessary for the tax component of, this is very complicated, but the tax component of the subsidies for the insurance exchanges. Complex. But the way they wrote the law was really stupid, and it leaves the next president, the opportunity basically to gut the program by not instituting a tax change. So, okay. Yes, ma'am, in the back. We'll do somebody in the back. Yeah. Yes. Oh, well. I'll come back here to Michigan and tell you that after we win on Tuesday. How's that? Thank you all very much. God bless you. Go out and help us. Sign up. Go vote. Get people to the polls. Help us out. God bless you.